In spite of a law that essentially bans Airbnb from New York City, some tenants continue to list their units on the platform. And now landlords are suing Airbnb for damages because they face fines from the city. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, I have an interesting article for you today, and it's kind of an update to a couple of stories that I covered before about this whole Airbnb ban within New York City. So now we have landlords who are actually going after the platform and suing them, probably hoping to get those listings removed from the platform that were allowed still somehow. And because they're facing fines, they're facing a lot of scrutiny from the city because the city will come after them. They won't go after these tenants. They won't go after the tenants who are abusing the system and breaking the law. They'll come after the landlords. And as I've mentioned many times before, there are a lot of landlords who do not want Airbnb on their property. One of the reasons being, at least in New York City, it's illegal. But another reason being that there's an additional liability. You're facing additional wear and tear and damage to your property, and a tenant is essentially running a business out of your property and didn't notify you that that's what they were intending on using it for. And I'm a residential landlord. I just want regular residential tenants in my building. I don't want someone operating a full service hotel out of one of my units. That's absolutely ridiculous. And yeah, I'm going to have to deal with all of the problems while they just skip town or whatever. And that's screwed up. Okay. It's completely screwed up. Now, if the tenant has permission from the landlord to operate within the building, and it's still banned within the city, well, they don't need to be doing that either, okay? Neither the landlord nor the tenant need the trouble of having to deal with a municipality that doesn't want them there, okay? So my opinion is that, hey, these tenants should move to somewhere where it isn't banned, or, just basically stop putting all this pressure on the landlord. Now, I know that you have a huge investment in this place or whatever, and at one point in time, Airbnb, people were making a ton of money off of it. But hey, you know what? Things are changing. Things are changing a lot. And I think Airbnb is just seeing a huge decline because of all of this pressure from these local municipalities and the neighborhood associations, etc., that say, hey, we don't want these things here. We don't want you operating a hotel out of our neighborhoods. Some people are claiming that it's causing a housing shortage. I personally don't believe that, but I see the writing on the wall. I see that since most people aren't, well, I'm not going to say most people, but there's a large group of people, very loud, vocal people who are not in support of it. Well, we're going to see more restrictions, more laws, more rules and regulations, and it's going to be even harder for people to be able to operate short term rentals and make any money. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. So if you were a landlord and one of your tenants was renting out your unit as an Airbnb, would you accept that or do you not approve of that? I'm just curious, okay? Personally, even though I'm a supporter of Airbnb and I believe the short-term rentals are okay, I don't want one of my tenants doing it, okay? That is not what I would agree upon inside one of my units. Now, if I personally do it, remember, I own the property. I take all of the risk and all the liability is mine. But I don't want a tenant doing it, and then I have to assume all of their liability. And I have no clue how they're operating their business. So they might be doing something shady, and then I'm the one who ends up getting sued. That's completely ridiculous. It's out of line, and that's why I won't have any of my tenants, knowingly, I won't have any of my tenants doing this sort of thing inside my properties. So, anyway, let's get into this story. This article is coming from the New York Post, and it says New York City landlords file suits claiming Airbnb and tenants are thumbing their noses at new home sharing restrictions. Like I said, New York City has basically banned Airbnb for 99% of people, but there's still people who have figured out some way around the whole thing. So let's see what the article says. A pair of landlords on Manhattan's Upper West Side are suing Airbnb and two tenants for flouting new city restrictions on home sharing, with the building owners claiming they are exposed to stiff fines. Airbnb and the tenants are thumbing their noses at Local Law 18, which went into effect on September 5th and requires hosts to register with the city in order to rent out their apartments for stretches less than 30 days, according to Michael Pinsabini, a real estate attorney at law firm Rosenberg and Estes. The firm represents the owner of 207 Columbus Avenue, a five-story walk-up that got slapped with a $12,000 fine last month for allowing tenant Carmen Magarin de Dominguez to illegally list her three-bedroom apartment on Airbnb, despite the fact she doesn't live there, according to court papers. So this landlord here got fined $12,000 by New York City. You know, this is what bothers me, right? This landlord probably had no clue that the unit was even being used as an Airbnb. Yet, guess who gets the fine? Not the person who actually is renting out the Airbnb, not the person who is knowingly breaking the city law. No, it is the landlord. So, like I said, I understand exactly why a landlord would say, hey, I'm against this sort of thing. And yes, they should go after this tenant. And I personally believe that's an evictable offense right there. Okay, violation of terms of the lease. It wouldn't surprise me one bit if this was a rent controlled apartment too. Okay, that's how ridiculous this stuff is. Now, I'm not saying that I support rent control, but this is what landlords or tenants, I'm sorry, tenants in New York are doing. They are getting a rent controlled apartment and then they are subleasing it so they can make all the profit themselves. And that's why I say the whole rent control system, it's rife with abuse and fraud by the tenants themselves. And the landlords are stuck picking up the bag, subsidizing cheap housing for someone else. That's stupid. But anyway, that's a different story. She's advertising my client's unit to accommodate up to 16 people, and she is charging $1,000 a night, Pinsabini told the Post. And if we can't stop Carmen Dominguez from doing this, she could cause another fine to be issued that would be twice as much as the one we have now. Dominguez, who in court papers attributed traffic in and out of her apartment to roommates and friends and family, failed to appear at a court hearing in the case on Monday, according to Pensabene. She couldn't immediately be reached for comment. So yeah, she's lying to the court and saying, "Oh, that's just friends and family." But you really think that the city of New York would be fining people for friends and family staying in the unit? No, they probably did it's easy enough to do a search on Airbnb and find properties that are still listed on there and then look into their little database and see that, hey, this isn't one of the properties that's registered with us. And it obviously couldn't be registered with them because according to their new law, unless you actually live in the property, you can't be renting it out as a short-term rental. And she doesn't live there. So yeah, it's obviously an illegal unit. It's obvious that she's lying about who's up in there, and guess who has to pay all these fines? The landlord. Meanwhile, the owner of 30 Lincoln Plaza, a posh 33-story glass and steel tower across the street from Lincoln Center that boasts a private club and rooftop pool, is suing 73-year-old tenant Jerome DeWald, claiming he has been renting out his one-bedroom apartment for $175 a night and a second private sitting room. The latter has a sofa bed and a wall secretary that serves as a partition with a locking door for $87 a night, according to court documents. The building's 24-hour doorman and surveillance camera spotted DeWald on two separate occasions carrying both sheetrock and wooden 2x4s in the building, presumably to create an additional bedroom, in violation of his lease and requiring approvals from the Department of Buildings, according to court papers. Can you imagine a 73-year-old man carrying 2x4s, DeWald told the Post, denying the allegations in an interview? Yeah, actually, I can. I have seen it, okay? Just because you're 73 doesn't mean you're so feeble that you can't carry 2x4s up into the building. The security guards saw you up in there. I'd be willing to bet that they also have security cameras with you doing it on them. So, just stop with the lies. The lies are what bothers me, okay? If you screwed up, if you are posting this stuff on Airbnb, right? Do you think they know how much the price and all that is unless they actually saw your listing? So you're lying. Take the stuff down, follow your city law. Now, I don't agree with the law. I don't. Okay? I'm going to say that right now. I do not agree with the law, but at the same time, you should honor the lease. Okay, you signed a contract, and in that contract, it probably said that you cannot use this unit as a short-term rental in the way that you are trying to use it as right now. So you violated the terms of your lease. You're screwing this landlord over. The landlord faces fines. You didn't, file the correct paperwork. Yeah, it's obvious that you're doing something shady here. And who takes the liability? Once again, it's the landlord. So yeah, this is an interesting story. I'll put a link to the article in the description so you can read the rest of it. But my personal opinion is that Airbnb, I mean, at this point, I wouldn't invest in an Airbnb, and it seems like it's gonna be one of those things that it was really big for a short period of time. I'm not saying all short-term rentals are going to disappear, but I think that the Airbnb platform, and I think that the huge number of short-term rentals that we saw in the past, I think those days are gone.